Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me as we explore places to go and things to do. You may get an idea from what's sitting here alongside of me that we're going to be talking about dolls today because we are involved in discussing the Museum of American Folk Art, which is located right across from Lincoln Center. And the subject is dolls, and the subject is also quilts. And people that I have with me today are actually two people who are very involved with those exhibits. Liz Warren, who is the curator of the quilt exhibit, and Nita Angelletti, who is a doll artist, and we have brought here today some of the dolls. And I'm so glad that both of you came here today, and we're going to talk about dolls, and we're going to talk about quilts, but we're also going to talk about what is folk art, and how do we define it? Is it a simple definition, or is it a complex subject?
It's its own show.
We could. I was going to say we could take the whole show for that. It's a very complex, and at the moment very controversial subject, and for those of us involved in the folk art world. Simply, I think you could say that it's defined as the work of self-taught artists, or alternatively, or in addition, traditionally trained artists, people who are creating works of art either for their own pleasure, for functional uses, but people who have not been to the academy, people who have not been to art school.
Why is it controversial, Liz?
Well, there are many different aspects of the field, and for any definition you could come up with, you would probably find somebody who could find an exception to that definition. So there are people who say that it's art that's created simply for one's own pleasure by self-taught artists, yet in the 19th century you had portrait artists who were traveling around the countryside making a living at painting portraits. And
were they folk artists?
These were considered folk artists. They were either self-taught or had minimal training, but had not been to the art schools, and so we consider them folk artists.
The range, in addition to these two exhibits, which run through September 8th,
correct.
You also have an ongoing exhibit of some of the folk art from the collection. It covers a very wide range, doesn't it?
That's right, and it's one of the reasons the field is controversial is because it's hard to find a definition that covers quilts, weather vanes, tavern signs, objects made for functional use, as well as art that's still being created today. A large portion of the field today is made up of artists who are what are called outsider, self-taught, or folk artists who have created in institutions, in prisons, or simply out of a religious zeal, for example. So it's a very wide range of objects.
So we're talking about creating today the dolls that you and the other artists, the range is enormous in the exhibit. All sorts of material, very, very creative. All American, of course, since everything that you have at the museum is American. Different materials, different styles.
And some of the materials now were not available, 200 years ago.
But it's an art form.
Yes,
and
its own art form.
And it's contemporary, very contemporary. Now, this doll that we have here, that we've placed out here, I think it's interesting that it's kind of moves around. Let's talk about this. It's a dancer, which is a reflection a little bit on your own background, which we'll talk about in a bit. But what is this made of?
Well, this is considered mixed media because it has mixed media, obviously, but her face is sculpted with an air drying clay, and then it's covered in cloth, so I'm considered a cloth artist. And then painted, gessoed, then painted. And then this particular piece has a torso that is cloth and stuffed, a wire armature, and the legs are sculpted and added, and the arms are sculpted, and the hands are sculpted separately, and then attached, and then costumed.
So you're working in multimedia, really, as far as
that's how I work. And many artists work like that, and some artists just work in one medium, say cloth or wood or leather, wax,
plastic,
resin, Yes, a lot of resin is now very popular because it's very durable.
How does it start? I mean, how do you start with a doll like this? Where does this is, as we said, a dancer. She's seated. Do you start with an idea?
Yes, an idea may come from a painting, a photograph, a color, sometimes fabrics, because I'm really into antique fabrics and colors. So I may start something just from looking at a piece of fabric. Well, that would make a great dress, and then it takes on. But I do have some sort of vision of where it's going. Then I sort of detach myself from it and let it work. You know, it works its way into its own being.
You told me that they talk to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we're not supposed to say that.
But actually, as it takes form, it kind of tells you.
Yeah, they name themselves. I mean, her name is Mimi, so maybe.
Do your dolls all have only one name?
No.
Like yourself, you're known as Nita, right?
Yes, in the doll world.
It's
just easier. No, some of them. Do we want to show this now?
Sure, let's take this one down and bring up another one.
This one is called...
I hope you notice that I'm not handling them.
That's okay. They're very durable.
They are durable.
They look fragile, but they're strong.
Now, this young lady is reclining in...
Well, it's called No Splashing, Please.
It's a bath.
So she's in her little pool, and she's had too many martinis or something. So that's her. That's the name of that piece. And this is all using... Actually, this doesn't have a cloth body. It has a wire armature and then sculpted over that with a clay and then dried and then covered in all sorts of wonderful antique fabrics. And this is this bouillon fabric from the 20s. And, and she's just swimming there.
Do you collect fabric and
Yes.
then sometimes the fabric suggests what you want to do with it?
Exactly. I'm very... fabric oriented, and I used to wear a lot of old clothes, antique clothes, so like a lot of those get cut up now.
For instance, this seems to suggest the overall theme. You say, what am I going to do with this? And that's what it turns out to be.
Yeah, sometimes it does. And then they have little lives of their own, you know. And so she was supposed to have a partner, a boyfriend, but he, you know, I guess she dumped him overboard or something. He didn't fit in there, so he's gone. So.
Does she have a name?
No. If you want to name her, I just call her. She's just saying no splashing, please.
Oh, so you name the pieces, but not necessarily give them names.
Yeah, well, it can be either or. I just thought it made it more, because some people look at this and they might not know what this is. This is an inner tube, and that's supposed to be suggestive of water. So when I say no splashing, please, I think they get the idea.
Let's bring another one up. We have some rather large ones here that we could show.
This one is, her name is Daphne. And I did make this for Santa Fe, a show in Santa Fe, and I thought she had the colors of a sunset. And, she has little leopard boots, and her hair is all made with this wonderful, I don't even know what this is. It's some sort of, they're old tassels. They're from the 30s, and I dipped them and dyed them. I love to dye things, too. And it's all about layering and texturing.
You have a strong fashion sense in what you're doing. Reflecting your thoughts or perhaps reflecting what you think people might wear?
Well, both, but my beginnings are in theater, so I think a lot of my dolls are very theatrical. And a lot of doll artists, though, I've found have started as in other art forms. A lot of them as costumers in the theater and in fashion. Illustrators, painters, sculptors.
Dollars, is that the expression you use?
Doll artist, yeah.
Doll artist, okay.
Yeah, it's redefining the doll not as a plaything, not as a child's toy, but as it's its own art form. It's really sculptured, figurative art, sculptured forms, sculpted, dressed. But it's easier to say dolls is art. It's its own, and it's been evolving. Actually, the first person, I think, who probably did this was Degas, in the Met. There's the 14-year-old dancer, and he costumed his bronze piece with a bow in her hair and little satin slippers and a tutu.
Is this type of doll art recent, or has it always existed in this type of form? We know this is contemporary, but how long has contemporary been going on?
Well, I think it's evolved in the last 25 years. In this exhibit at the museum, there are some pioneers that really have brought it to this level. And it's been evolving. to this form, because this is not a plaything.
Yes.
She's, so what do you call her? And it's an interesting, whole concept. And
it's a fascinating concept, and some of the work there is just
isn't it incredible? Very humbling.
Let's put her to sleep, and let's give a little perspective on how this all happens. Stripping it down to its bare bones, so to speak. So this is how it starts, isn't it?
Well, this is how this particular one, you'll see something that's in the similar style, clothed and finished. But it starts with a wire armature, and this is my stand, which is copper tubing that I have just put her on. And then it gets covered. I use aluminum foil so as not to use too much of the clay, which can get expensive. The face is sculpted. I usually start first with the heads. That's just how I work. And I sculpt the face, and then my faces are covered. She's not covered yet in fabric. She'll get a totally different look. And then painted. And this little piece here shows you, this is too large for her in scale, but that shows you how an armature is started. That's the base. That's a hand.
This is a hand.
Yes. Then it will get some paper around it, so the clay will adhere to that more. And then it gets attached. But then, she's going to take on a life of her own here. She's going to be a Spanish dancer. Nice back there, something exaggerated.
Did you determine that before you started?
Yes, I want to do a whole series of Spanish dancers, turn of the century.
Did I see a rose fall off her?
Yeah, she did. I'm not in the right position, but she'll have something. Shall I show this one and you can see?
Yes, we'll take this one down, and then we'll see what it might end up being.
Now, this is going to be a different piece because no two pieces are alike. I'm a one-of-a-kind artist, but you get the feeling how different it is when she's costumed.
And she started...
and she started like that.
Exactly like that.
But I got this idea when I was in Spain, in Madrid, on a Sunday. I remember that day in the Plaza Mayor. There was this wonderful little shop, and in the window they had these little postcards. I think they were pastels, and I bought a whole bunch of them. And they were Spanish dancers from the turn of the century, and I always wanted to do something with them, and so that's what we're inspired from, those cards.
And she has so much fabric involved.
Yeah, I love fabric again.
It's just great, and the feeling of the dance. So we talked about the fact you have some background in the theater, don't you?
I came to New York and went to Juilliard, was accepted in the drama division and under Houseman right in the beginning of it. And then a part led me to dancing, and it's a long story, but that led me to mask making, and which eventually led me to the dolls.
But you always had this artistic talent, and how long does it take to put a doll together from concept to...
About 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little less.
Do you work on more than one at the same time?
Sometimes, but they're all one of a kind, and actually they need time to grow and get into who they are. I like to wake up and then go and look at different light and see what they look like in the morning, and because it's one of a kind, which means that's it.
Do doll artists all know each other? I know there's been some books. I know at the wonderful gift shop at the museum, they have a great book on dolls.
The Art of the Contemporary Doll. The guest curators for this exhibit, the contemporary doll, Art of the Doll. The Art of the Contemporary Doll? Yes. And Christina Gadou and Wendy Lavitt, and they wrote this book.
And some of the dolls in the exhibit are in the book, I noted. Yes. And it's a great book. I mean, if you're into this subject at all, it really covers... a lot of books have been written on various subjects of not only of dolls, but of all of this folk art. And you have them in the... Now, your background, of course, is at the museum. You've been at the museum for... you're the curator of this current exhibit on quilts, aren't you?
Right.
But you've been curator at the museum itself, the curator of the museum.
I was curator at the museum starting in 1984 through 1991, and since then I've been consulting curator, meaning I work on my own exhibitions and books, and in the past few years that's primarily centered on the quilt collection of the museum. I'm one of those people who studies what creative people like Nita do. I can't sew myself, but
we need you.
I like to look at the history of art and the history of the creative process and place it in its cultural context and historic context.
Quilts are a fascinating subject. I have to admit that I was not a quilt person. I knew they existed. But when I saw this exhibit, which opened up my eyes to the vast variety. As a matter of fact, you brought a book with you, which is somewhere over here, about quilts. I mean, quilts is a subject. I met a woman and I made a comment and she said, "Oh, I'm a quilter." So quilting is not necessarily something of the past, is it?
It's not. It's a very, very vibrant contemporary art form as well, and it varies from people who are doing the patterns of the past, the traditional patterns, into the contemporary studio art quilts, they're called. People who are taking the fibers and the concept of a quilt, which is basically a fabric sandwich made up of 3 layers, a top, a filling, and a backing that is joined together then by stitches, which we call quilting. And they're taking this concept and expanding it to something that goes far beyond the original purpose of a bed cover. Today, they're much more made for display on the walls than they are for the beds.
Now,
or one side of it.
I want to get into a discussion of where the quilts in this exhibit are from. But first of all, I do want to remind our viewers that we're talking about the Museum of American Folk Art exhibits on quilts and dolls, which are currently at the museum. The museum is located directly across from Lincoln Center on Broadway. And is it on Broadway?
It's Columbus, between 65th and 66th.
I never can tell since they
I know, that's exactly where they come together.
Right there. And Liz Warren, who is the curator of the quilt exhibit, and Nita, one of the doll artists. And I always like to stop into that museum either before or after I go to Lincoln Center. It's so convenient. It's such a wonderful location. And
it's free.
And it's free. That's right. That's a very good point.
Can't beat the price.
No, you can't beat the price. And it's so well done. Getting back to the quilts themselves, the variety of quilts that you have in this exhibit, it fascinated me that you don't always know the origin.
Well, one of the problems with folk art in particular is that I think the most common artist in our collection is anonymous. Folk art is very often not signed, and especially quilts aren't signed. And sometimes we're lucky, women will put their names on it, or they'll put the name of the person for whom the quilt was intended. Sometimes there'll be initials and a date, and those give us clues to do research. But most of the quilts that come into our collection are what I call orphans. They've been separated from the families.
It's an interesting term.
Yeah, we don't know who made them. They're separated from the families that they originated with, and we may have a bit of anecdotal information that comes with it. It may say made for a wedding, or made by an African-American woman, or very often quilts that are Amish quilts have a particular look, and we can identify them.
Are there different styles? Very
Absolutely.
definitely.
Absolutely. Quilt making has followed fashion. It's followed fads and trends. And one of the ways that we date the quilts is by looking at what designs they show, what fabrics have been used. They follow other decorative arts, and in fact, I like to study them as a decorative art and see how they relate to other things that were being done at the time.
Do they have different names of the categories of different types?
Well, there are quilts that are made by specific ethnic groups, such as the Amish quilts, or today there are quilts being done by Hmong quilt makers who come from Laos, I believe, Southeast Asia. There are also quilts that have been done by Native Americans. It follows through.
Some of the quilts seem to follow a pattern. Some illustrate things. Some of them show a family history. Is that the way it happens, or is it just evolve?
Well,
are there categories or groups that people say, well, I'm going to make this type of a quilt, or do they evolve?
It depends on the quilt maker. There are certain types of quilts that are have been popular at different times during history, but today we know all that history, and the quilt makers can have a wide array of types of quilts that they can draw from when they decide to make something. Very popular in the 1840s period, for example, were signature quilts, which grew out of the fad for autograph albums that became popular, say, in the 1820s, and women then took that fad of signing their names in an autograph book, translated it to a fabric medium, and that's what we love to find, because then we've got lots of names and dates and places, and we can do the history of it.
Are quilts made by groups of people mostly?
They can be made either as a group project or as an individual project. Very often what you find is that a woman will piece a quilt by herself, sew all those little patches and pieces of fabric together on her own, and then bring it to a quilting bee, where the 3 layers of the sandwich, the fabric sandwich, would be joined together. And that would be a very important social event where they could get together with their peers, especially if they're in a situation where they're working in an isolated community, or even in an urban environment today, you sometimes get isolated and need to get together with people who are interested in the same things that you are, and quilts have a tendency to bring people together.
Are they all
like
pieces, patchwork, so to speak? Maybe that term is wrong, but are they?
No.
Is it ever made from a whole cloth?
There is a type of quilt known as the whole cloth quilt, which was a very early variety of American quilts. Mostly today, however, you may still find that, but people are more interested in cutting up pieces of fabric and sewing them back together. You have to remember that when quilts first started to be made in America, fabric was probably the most valuable possession you could own. Everything had to be imported. Even if you could grow your own linen or had your own sheep, the labor involved in turning that into fabric was so intensive that it was worth quite a bit of money. And the fabric you put on your bed might be worth more than that bed.
You brought along one quilt, which we're going to show, and maybe when we do that, we can kind of talk about what made this happen. Now, when I have a quilt to show in a limited setting such as this, the best way is for you and me to hold it up.
Okay.
So why don't we just do that with this quilt that you brought here?
Like me to stand?
No, it'll be fine right here. And let's talk about what this consists of. It's so colorful.
Well, this is a quilt from the 1920s. It was made in Ohio by a woman named Susie Hirschberger. She was an Amish woman, and you know that this is an Amish quilt, number one, because I had the name and the history, but if I didn't know that, I could tell because it's made all using solid colored fabrics. There are no prints because the Amish consider print fabrics too worldly. And it's got these beautiful borders around it, a wide outer border and a narrow inner border. And Amish quilts are typically made in that style. This pattern is I brought it because it's one of the oldest quilt patterns in use in America. It's called, originally it was called hexagon piecing or mosaic piecing. The method of doing this was published in Godey's Lady's Book in 1835. It was brought over from England. It was the American quilt making tradition originated in England, but we feel reached its zenith in America. And then this was popular all through the 19th century, and then sort of rediscovered in the 1920s during a colonial revival period when it was reinvented and called Grandmother's Flower Garden. But actually the pattern has been known here since the 1830s.
You said it was in a book. Are there books of patterns?
Patterns...
we can put this one down.
Sure. Godey's Lady's Book was a magazine that was published in America in the early 19th century, throughout most of the 19th century, actually. And they would print occasionally patterns for patchwork, as did other periodicals. Peterson's was another. So patterns have been available for people who want to make quilts since the early 19th century. Now, they're not the kind of patterns that we're used to following today. In fact, when I read the original magazine, basically what they do is just show a picture of this, and it's up to the quilt maker then to interpret it and figure out how exactly to put the pieces together herself.
Imagination.
And if you've been trained to sew, as most girls were, you would have some knowledge as to how to put it all together and make it a quilt.
You've given us so much information. I do want to have the opportunity to give the telephone number for the Museum of American Folk Art that people can call to get information.
Sure. The gallery number is 212-595-9533.
And the museum, that, yeah.
Sure, it's 212-595-9533. And the museum is open from Tuesday through Sunday, 11:30 to 7:30.
Open till 7:30 for people who are on the way.
On your way to Lincoln Center, you can stop in beforehand.
It's a delightful exhibit.
The museum is delightful. The dolls are incredible. The quilts are unbelievable.
I've cut up. I have a couple of old crazy quilts. That's Victorian, I believe.
It's interesting because I was going to say, do they ever overlap? And obviously do. And what we've done, if we don't want to overlap on the next program, is run out of time. So I thank you both for coming. It's been a wonderful experience. We've been talking today with Liz Warren and Nita, who come to us from the Museum of American Folk Art, a great place on Columbus Avenue across from Lincoln Center. Go there. You'll enjoy it. I'm Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. Until next time, enjoy yourself.